This video is for you. Unless you wanted to see my workflow process, then this video will not make any sense to you. But if you are one of those people who wanted to see my Photoshop process, then this video is for you. And in this video, I will show my complete Photoshop process of turning myself from this to this. And now my intro should roll in. The first thing that I do is always search for references, and I basically Google the character I want to turn into, or I search them in Pinterest. Right after it, the first thing that I do is separate myself from the background using pen tool. For this particular edit, I had two images of mine because I was not sure which one would look better in the final edit. Then what I did is I searched for background images in Unsplash and imported it in my Photoshop file. After that, I positioned myself according to the background. Now that I've adjusted myself according to the background, what I do is fill the canvas with the background. And how I do that is by duplicating the background layer and convert it into raster layer if it is a smart object. Then what I do is press and hold Ctrl and left click on the thumbnail of the layer, and what that do is select the whole layer. And after that, what I do is go to select, modify and contract it by 10 pixels. And then what I do is invert the selection by pressing Ctrl-Shift-I simultaneously, and that inverts our selection. And after that, you can simply fill it with content aware by pressing Shift and F5, and you can simply press OK without changing anything, and that will fill your canvas with the background layer. It's that easy. Right after that, what I like to do is adjust the exposure of my subject, and in this case me. And how I do that is by going to the adjustment layer and choosing exposure, and then what I do is bring down the exposure a bit. And now what I want to do is limit this exposure layer to the subject. The way to do that is by using clip mask. And to use clip mask, press and hold Alt key, and when you move your cursor between the two layers, you can see an icon popping up. And if you left click right there, your exposure layer will be limited to just your subject layer. And now whatever I change in this exposure layer, it will only be limited to my layer. Let's change the value back to 2. And now what I like to do is take out this exposure effect from my highlights, because I will need them in the final edit. And the way to do that is, one, you can paint with black and your effect will be gone. This is one method, but this is not how I do it. How I do it is by using blending options. And to use blending option, double click on the exposure layer, and then you will see this window popping up. And here we can adjust some sliders in the underlying layer options. And as you can see, this one is for the shadows, this one is for the highlights. If I take this slider from right to left, you can see the effect of exposure layer is been taken out from the highlights. But right now it is too harsh, like literally too harsh. You can see the pixels. And to soften this transition, what you can do is press Alt and left click between the slider. It will break it apart. And then what you can do is increase the distance between it, and you will notice the transition is lot smoother, like this was before. And if I increase the distance, it will be a lot smoother. That's how I change exposure of my subject. And then using the same method, I change the exposure of my background layer and make some more adjustment in my subject layer. And then comes veins. I tried different method, but nothing seemed to work until I searched for wood in Unsplash and finally found this image, which I downloaded instantly. And how I use this is I selected the black lines using magic wand tool, and I just simply clicked, and then you can simply duplicate it by pressing Ctrl J on your keyboard, and then you will have something like this. And after doing that, what you can do is you can again make selection of your main character, and now I already have a layer for it. So what I'll do is press and hold Ctrl and click on the thumbnail of the main character's layer, and when I do it, I have this selection of my main character. Now click in this checkbox which is for mask, and right when I do that, it will make a selection of it. So now I have the wood lines with selection of the subject. Then what I did is adjusted the lines and clipped it with layers like these, and then I had this, and right now we have come this far. For the hairs, I found this image which I thought was perfect for this example, and I tried to merge it with some hair brushes until I got something like this. To make the dragon, what I did is I traced the original dragon and clip an image which looked like scales of a dragon, and made some adjustment in exposure according to the lightning, and changed the color to red by using hue and saturation. I did this to make each part of the dragon so that it gives a 3-dimensional look. And using the same method, I made leg warmers and slippers, and I also made the fire using the same method. Then for the flying rocks, what I did is use this image and selected the rock with quick selection tool, and I simply selected the rocks that I liked and duplicated them by pressing Ctrl J, and I had something like this. Now I don't like this part, so what I'll do is erase it. And then what I did is flipped it horizontally because I want the shadow part to face this area, and I'm seeing that this area doesn't look good. So what I did is make new layer, made a shape with pen tool, filled it with some color, and then what I can do is I can duplicate this layer and press Alt between the layers and clip it to the shape layer. And now what that allows me to do is I can move the rock layer, and it will be limited only to the shape layer. And now I have a perfect looking rock. Now I can merge these 3 layers by selecting all of them and pressing Ctrl E, and that merges our layer. And now what I can do is select an exposure layer, clip it to this layer, and then I can bring down the exposure, and then I can simply paint in the areas I want the exposure to affect. And using the same method, I made rest of the rocks. Right after that, what I did is I did spark from this image, and how I did that is I just simply changed the blending mode to lighten and remove the areas I didn't want it. To hide those bluish tint, what I did is I select a curve layer, and you can simply clip it by clicking in this icon, or you can press and hold Alt click and clip it that way, whichever way you like. And then what you can do is click in the middle of this line and bring it down, and what that do is it darkens the image. So the blending mode lighten hides everything that is dark. So if you darken the image, it will hide that blue tint that we have. So if I normalize this image, you can see what's happening. Before using the curves adjustment layer, we had something like this, and after we darkened the image, we had something like this. So basically all the black color is being hidden when we choose lighten, and that's how I added more spark to it. After that, I did some more adjustment in camera raw filter, and I finally had what I wanted. If you are a beginner, I would suggest you not to chase the final result, but to understand how to use the tools and why we are using them. That's what is more important than chasing the main result, because when you are a beginner, your final result will not look good. Maybe it can, but most of the time it doesn't. And this is what I made when I was a beginner in Photoshop. So never chase the final result, and just try to understand the concept and try to understand the tools in Photoshop. While I was editing my workflow video for this edit, I noticed I lost all my features in the final edit. And that is something I learned from this edit, and I hope you also learned something from this video. And if you did, do press the like button, subscribe to the channel, press that notification bell, and maybe I will see you next week.